Okay, so a lot of people have voiced interest about having more interview-like videos or interview-like sessions where we basically just sit down and talk with different people about different topics. So this is the first one of those. We're basically going to be talking with Eilana on the forum about her work with demons and how she learned to connect with them, how she started working with them, and where those experiences led her. It's kind of going to be a testimonial a bit to her work with them and how far she's come since the day she brought home her first demon companions. So here she is. Hi, Eilana.
Hi,
How are you doing today?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So tell me, what drew you to demons in the first place?
It actually was after I had exhausted all other spiritual paths. I was trying to find something I felt was missing in my life, and I wasn't quite sure what it was. I was actually a bit afraid of them because of all the stuff that I had heard over the course of my life, and I avoided them until I found Satan and Sons when it seemed more of a balanced approach in working with them.
Now, that's an interesting thing you say, because I know a lot of people are afraid of demons initially, and it's very much bred into us from day one that demons are bad and demons are evil. There's a really nasty stigma against them.
There really is, and I was brought up in a Christian family, Catholic specifically, and it was definitely something that was repeated.
What pushed you to the point where you were finally able to take that plunge?
It was a combination of just being done with everything I had tried before and really wanting to go to the next level and having nothing that resonated with me. Then when I did find Satan and Sons, I was curious about it. I wanted to go further. I wanted to see what it was.
Yeah, we take a very different approach to demons at Satan and Sons. We like to bring the balance back to the dark side. That's our motto. Was there anything in particular that really spoke to you about the demons, how we work with them? And
It was the first time I contacted you because I was a bit nervous, of course, and I was like, well, if this person, a lot of people who walk a darker path, if you've ever spoken to them or approached them, some of them can come off as complete psychopaths or, you seemed very balanced and grounded and normal, whereas some people, I don't know what I would expect from them, but I really wouldn't want to talk to them much more than I had.
so, what happened when you reached out and got your first demon and brought
It
him home?
Well, I contacted you and then I placed my first order, and after that, I started having things happen. And I do remember I had dreams. The first thing was a dream where I dreamed of colors and I had a feeling, and it was a different dream than something I had experienced before, and it stood out. It was very vivid. My senses were not developed at that point, but I was able to feel something, and I was like, that was very interesting. I remember I asked on the forum, and people said, "Oh, it sounds like your companion's reaching out to you." And then after that, it was confirmed it was him.
Yeah, there was a lot of exciting things that happened in your life after he came home.
Yes, quite a few. An item that had been lost, and it was really lost. It actually was thrown out of the window of a moving vehicle, was then found. It happened in the winter, so there was a huge snowstorm, and a few months passed, and he had just arrived. His vessel had just arrived at my house, and we decided to go see if we could find the item. And it was a ring, and we did in fact find it after the snow thawed. It was there, just sitting on the ground. It was very strange. It was off the side of a highway too, so it wasn't, like in the yard or something.
That's really impressive.
It was.
A lot of people I know, they report that when they start working with spirit companions, they're able to find lost items, or they notice things moving around in their environment, or the dreams, as you mentioned. These
Yes.
are the initial stages of contact. How did it develop, your connection with him?
It it developed differently over time because I'm naturally clairaudient, so I could hear him. The thing was, I did not trust my senses, so I tended to not believe a lot of what I heard, or got the things that I thought I had heard. I didn't really believe I was hearing it. I was like, okay, I'm probably crazy or something like that. And it took some time for me to get used to hearing things and then having them happen. It was a bit, well, it freaked me out a little bit at first.
I think that's a lot of struggles that we have, is that balance of, are we crazy or is this normal? Because often when we're children, we're taught that all these things are fantasy. They're all just in our head. They're make-believe. So then as we progress into adults, we carry that with us, that all this stuff is just complete make-believe. So when we're faced with it, when it's impacting our physical world, we're left with that impression of, am I crazy or is this real? It's a balance that I think a lot of people struggle with, especially on this field. How did you find that you balance those notions of, well, this is real versus I'm crazy?
It took a while. It took a while, and it took repeated experiences and me hearing them and them doing things that were just absolutely amazing. I really could not believe some of the things that they told me, and then I would go repeat them to people, you included, and it was like, how did you know this? And I was like, well, the demons told me this. Or they told me something would happen, and then it did. I mean, the way I got my job, by then I was listening to them pretty well. But I did end up becoming an engineer through their guidance and just things that happened in my day-to-day life. It was like I was just, by listening to them, able to predict things I should not have been able to know were going to happen.
The job, that was quite amazing, because in a short period of time, your income jumped an incredible amount. Can you go into more detail about that? Because that was quite an impressive experience.
Yes, it was. The first year, actually, within the first, I guess, couple weeks of him coming into my life, that would be my divinity demon king, my first demon, I received a $10,000 bonus, where the years before it had been like maybe $1,000 to $2,000. So that was before I even wanted to be an engineer. Then I worked with him, I healed some things, and I decided I did want to be an engineer. So things started to shift around. I had brought other demon companions home. I was also working with various Dark Lords, Lord Lucifer, Lord Mammon. And the following year, this person I had never spoken to came up to me and said, I want to have a discussion with you. I'd like to hire you as an engineer. And I really didn't know how he had even heard about me at that point. I found out later, but just the timing of it was really interesting. And they wanted only me, so they did some things to make sure it was me that got the position, and it just kind of went from there. So within a year and a half after starting work with demons, I then became an engineer. And after a few months of being an engineer, they promoted me to lead on a project, and it was really crazy.
That's amazing, because when you hear words like engineer, I mean, that's not like I've gone from burger flipper to manager. That is a significant title that requires a lot of work and a lot of dedication. And do you think that demons were responsible for opening that opportunity up for you?
Yes, definitely. I mean, the opportunity became available to me through them, through their guidance, because, after that, the person showed up and said, I want to have a discussion with you. And then I was speaking to the demons that I worked with, and they told me pretty much word for word what the person was going to say in the interview he set up with me. And he said just that, and I was prepared for it. I was like, yes, I do want to be an engineer. I don't care how hard it's going to be, so let's do this.
That's amazing. That is such an amazing journey, to have such a life transformation with that. Now, you also mentioned healing.
Yes.
Working with demons, it does come with its fair share of healing, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
That's one thing I don't think a lot of people realize and are prepared for, is that when you start walking with demons, everything that blocks you, everything that holds you back, everything that, has been damaged in you is going to come up.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that. They just, they want something instantly manifested. And I think a lot of people don't understand the manifestation process, in that you can't always just snap your fingers and get what you want. Sometimes you have to do deep inner work to change and heal damaged mindsets or things that have happened to you, things in your subconscious there's a lot there that could be blocking you. And it's not just, some blocks can just be cleared, but some you will have to do the work to do that yourself.
And it's a lot of work when you start digging into the deep recesses of the subconscious. I know that it took me many years before I was even able to consider moving in the direction I wanted to, because I was just so blocked and I held myself back from everything that was lodged in my subconscious. It's really a process that I don't think a lot of people realize. And when you first start, you are faced with horrors. And I think that this is one of the reasons why demons have the bad rep that they do, is because when all that stuff starts coming out, it's painful and it hurts and it's horrible. And it's like, what is this? And what are you doing to me?
It can be absolutely brutal. And yes, I thought that too. When I had things coming up, I was like, what is this? Why is this happening? Why are you doing this to me? And it's like, you need to go through this to get to where you want to be, because you're holding yourself back. This is a damaged belief. This is a limiting belief. You can't do what you want to do until you shift out of this or heal this or go into it and take care of whatever needs to be taken care of. And I've seen people react to it and then decide they're not going to work with a certain known demon because they didn't like the response they got. And I'm curious if that's what happened.
Me too, because it does. I know from my own personal experience, I've had work with them where I've honestly felt like my entire life has been destroyed. But when I actually stop now and look back at it, it's like, okay, the life I didn't want was destroyed because it was preventing me from creating the life I actually want to create. And yeah, at the time I was really frustrated and I was really enraged almost by what happened. This was my work with Mammon, when my whole life basically just fell apart, and the only advice he offered was I had to change my perspective. I had to get out of this. And every excuse I threw at him, but I can't do this. I need to do this, but I need, one of them was I need to eat. Like, you can't just do this to me. And he mocked me with that. He mocked me horribly. And I realized, looking back on it, that it was because all of those beliefs, all of those excuses that I had at that point, they were keeping me trapped in that old life and preventing me from going where I had asked him to take me. I mean, I joke with Mammon, you be careful what you ask for, because he'll give it to you.
Yes.
As painful and as horrible as it is, he'll give it to you. But it's actually not really that painful once you realize what's going on.
Yes, once it stops. Once you get through it, then it's like, okay, that was actually worth it. During it, though, it can be maddening.
It can.
I had moments where I definitely was like, what did I do? Why did I ask for this? I don't want it anymore. And it's like, well, I'm in the middle of it now, so I kind of can't stop. I have to go, somewhere with this, and I'm certainly not going backwards. I definitely don't want to go back to where I was. And sometimes he asked me that, because I did work with Mammon. Yes, my life was destroyed. I got to a point, actually, after I did become a lead engineer, and I was the top tier of engineering. When something broke, there was nobody else to call. I was it. And this was in a multi-billion-dollar, multinational, huge corporation. There was nobody I could call to fix it. I fixed it, and I was up all hours of the night until I did fix it. And I did get paid very well for that, but it was incredibly stressful. And I was like, why did I ask for this? And it got to the point where I just was like, what was I thinking? But it was a learning experience. I do not regret it. I do appreciate everything he did. As angry as I was during moments of it, I realized, yes, I did do this. I asked for this. I said I could handle it, so we're going to go with this.
Yeah, the things we ask for, sometimes we're not ready for them. That's, I think, another thing that people don't realize when they start working with demons, is that it's not just going to be instant. They're not just going to snap their fingers and grant your wishes. What you put into working with them is what you get out. I mean, if you're willing to work and push yourself to the very limits of your capacity and just completely go full throttle, they're going to put in just as much, and you're going to get results. You're going to get major results. But if you just expect to ask them for something and then for them to magically make it appear, it's not going to happen.
I agree with that, because I was in the position before that. I had gotten hired into the company. I was with the company, let's see, what year is that? I was with the company, I think, for like 4 years, and I hadn't gone anywhere. I was still in the same place I was in. Then a year and a half after working with them, I did get promoted to the top tier of engineering, which is really, really crazy when you think of it, because I started out in an entry level position, and then I moved up to the next grade, and then I went from that to the top of the engineering department in that it was mainframe specifically, which I didn't even have a background in mainframe. When I got there, I started learning it, but they were willing to train me. That was another thing. I did train very hard, but it wasn't like, I had trained all this time. They gave me the opportunity to get trained and do all this, and I did jump at it.
It's amazing when you think about it, just how far you went in a short amount of time.
Yeah, I got further in the year and a half to 2 years of working with them than I had in the 4 years I had been at the company prior.
How much energy towards that would you say you invested in that, into making those changes happen? Like, what was the ratio to you putting in energy to things manifesting?
Well, I put everything I had in. I generally do that, but with them, it was like I had the guidance and the focus. Also, they did teach me how to focus. My energy is better. They taught me a lot of things. How to shift my mindset to even manifest that opportunity, because they told me that I was too focused on working alone. I needed to expand. I needed to network. I needed to work with other people. I was keeping to myself too much. So I had to build up my social skills and working with other people and just get myself out there.
So you were really guided to not just the opportunity, but what you needed to make the opportunity happen.
Yes.
So in the areas of like focusing, social skills, mental mastery, you had your skills, but then they expanded your skills and helped you open up new avenues so that you could go even farther.
Yes, I had the technological skills. I didn't have a lot of the other things. And they told me what I needed to learn, what I needed to do to get those things to open up, to get those opportunities to open up to me. And also then how to handle them when they arose. Because as I said, I certainly wasn't ready to be an engineer, but they were willing, like the training was provided to me. The company was like, we want to hire you as an engineer and we will train you. So everything was given to me if I agreed to do the work.
Which is awesome.
It was absolutely amazing, because it was like, yes, you can. It wasn't just like, oh, here you're an engineer, you don't know what you're doing. No, it was, we want to hire you as an engineer, we'll give you everything you need. And as I went, they taught me how to do other things too. It was all given to me. Maybe not in the way people would expect it to be, because I certainly didn't have all the knowledge, but I was willing to work to gain it. So those opportunities arose. I was given the opportunity to train, to learn, to do everything that I needed to do.
Now that brings up another interesting point, expectations. Do you think people often, their expectations of what they think is going to happen often blocks them?
Yes. I think that does happen, because I think a lot of people will try to manifest things like, oh, well, I want to be a millionaire, so I want to win the lottery. But if you've seen people sometimes who win the lottery, they will end up just blowing it all and then not having anything left. I've seen people get inheritances and other things. And when you get that amount of money, you need to learn how to manage it.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually did teach me how to manage my money. And there's a lot of aspects to it. Well, people maybe will win the lottery or get an inheritance or something like that. If they don't know what to do with it, it's probably going to be gone very quickly because they didn't shift their mindset.
Money is such a deep area of understanding and growth. I know from just the things that Mammon has taught me and guided me to, I've only scratched the surface really, and it's just incredible what there is to learn when it comes to working with money and managing money, and really the vibration of money and how to shift it around you. It's like a never-ending pool, really.
It is, and that's the whole thing around like abundance and wealth, prosperity mindset, all of that. I mean, when I first started, or right before I first started working with demons, I was living paycheck to paycheck. I could barely pay my bills. And I worked at the same place, but I wasn't managing my money well. I mean, obviously the $10,000 bonus helped. And then it was like, okay, well, where do I go from here?
Mm-hmm.
And I had started a savings account, but at one point I had to spend it to fix something. I don't remember what broke. It might have been my car. but all of it was taken, and I felt like my safety net was gone, and they told me how to work without a safety net, and it forced me to shift things because I was holding on to things and not doing what I needed to. They also gave me investment tips because I had a 401k, and they told me how to invest my money, and I made such a ridiculous amount when I went to get my taxes done. The person was like, how did you get this much money in this amount of time? And I was like, well, I invested it. And they're like, what did you do? This is unreal. And I obviously wasn't going to tell
the demons told me.
Yeah, exactly. Tell the person doing my taxes. Well, the demons told me to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine the look on his face if you just said that.
Yeah, I can't even imagine that.
So this brings up another very interesting area. Your level of psychic awareness is quite advanced because you are getting this knowledge, you're getting these skills. I mean, the fact that you are being told these things, that you can receive these messages, is incredibly impressive. How did you begin growing your psychic abilities?
I could kind of hear. I would hear like one or two words. I put all of my focus actually in the beginning of working with demons into learning to communicate with them. I didn't focus on, I want to change this in my life. I want money. I want this. I was like, no, first I need to focus on communication, because if I cannot hear them, if I can't communicate with them somehow and get the messages I need to get, I'm not going to be able to really work with them. So I think communication is incredibly important. And what it came down to was trusting what I got, but also being able to filter out the stuff that was my mind, that was my influence, that was things that were blocking me, or subconscious beliefs maybe that were clouding what I was getting from them or changing the interpretation.
That, I think, happens a lot. Learning to distinguish what's coming from inside the mind to what is external.
Yes.
How did you learn to know the difference between the thoughts in your mind and their voices?
They sounded different. Like, my train of thought sounds different than their voices. I do actually hear them differently. They have different voices. When one of them speaks, I know who's speaking if it's somebody I've worked with before. If it's somebody new, then I'm probably on guard. Of course, I have shielding and everything, and it's like, okay, who's speaking now? And we go from there. But being able to differentiate from my own mind, it usually was things that just caught me completely off guard. Because you know how you have thoughts that go through your head. You're like, okay, I have to do this today. I have to do this today. And then it's like you hear another voice that tells you something that's completely off the wall. And I don't mean like something crazy, but just something you wouldn't think yourself. You're like, what was that? Mm-hmm. So, and I did a lot of audio exercises.
What sorts of exercises did you do?
Well, I did one where I would sit in the room and listen. I would listen to everything in the physical environment with me and try to pick the sounds out. Like, I would hear maybe cars in the background, the furnace coming on or something, somebody moving in the other room, or somebody talking in the distance if somebody had a radio on. Another one I did was listening to music and trying to pick out the different instruments separately, because everything is all together, but if you can pick out the individual sounds, then just focusing on one instrument through the entire song, so I could, I guess, differentiate between what I was hearing.
That's a combination of focusing exercises as well as training your physical ears. That's a really great exercise there.
Yeah, it served me very well.
I know that you heard different exercises from them. They gave you different exercises to do to help train you.
Yes, some of these I did hear from them, and some of them I was led to. And that was another thing. I did guided meditations with them, because by then I could hear. Mm-hmm. I had developed my hearing, but I did this every single day. I journaled. I did take the time to do it, and I just kept up with it.
How long and how consistent were you at these practices in the beginning?
Before demons, I really didn't have many experiences. I would hear words one-off here and there. And when I started working with demons, obviously I was still doing it. I was doing it daily. I did it pretty much at the same time. I would do it at night. And I think it was maybe around 8 p.m. Not that that matters, but that was the time I had open when I wasn't working or sleeping. And I'd probably do it for at least 20 minutes to an hour, however long I could, depending on how tired I was or if I had other things going on. And I think total, because I could hear them pretty well by then, it took me maybe, I'm guessing, a few months to maybe like 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then after, I had exercises, some of them which I got from you from the third eye working. I would repeat them until I felt like I wasn't getting anything else out of them, or it got to a point where it felt like I had gotten as much as I could, or I was bored with it. And then I moved to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
But I always kept up those exercises and the focusing exercises, and meditation, daily meditation I did.
How important would you say a daily spiritual routine is to developing these skills?
I think it's incredibly important, especially when you start, because if you don't have a foundation, you need to build one. Once I was able to hear them, then I could just, I didn't have to sit there in focused meditation for an hour a day. I could just communicate with them throughout the day. So I was using the skills I had built up. But in the beginning, I think it's incredibly important, because if you don't have the skill, after you develop the foundation, then it's maintenance, I guess, unless you want to expand it.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably maybe like exercising or something like that.
How far have you expanded your connection and communication with them?
I worked first on fully developing my clairaudience, so I can hear them, I can differentiate voices, I hear them, my hearing comes through like somebody's in the room with me. So when I actually have people physically in the room with me, and I'm also trying to communicate with demons or other entities, it can be really loud, and it almost sounds like a room full of people just talking all at once. So sometimes it's like, okay, one of you talk at a time, I can't hear you all at once. Or if I'm translating or translocating or whatever you would call that, I would have to tell the person I was trying to get messages for, okay, don't talk, I have to listen to them for a moment before I can repeat what they say, because it would be like having a bunch of people talk at once.
Mm-hmm.
I also developed my astral vision, and I could naturally smell things sometimes, like randomly there would be scents in the room that weren't there or that nobody else would smell.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what that is. That
olfactory sense?
Yes. And what other senses? I did develop, I think it's clairvoyance as well.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to sense things, because that was not my strongest sense at all.
Clairsentience is sensing. Clairvoyance is seeing.
Okay, yes. Clairvoyance, sorry. Clairvoyance I did, that was a seeing one, and then yes, clairsentience as well, because I couldn't sense things. And the sensing was different, obviously, because hearing things, you can hear anything, but what does it feel like, and scanning it and making sure it lines up.
That's interesting, because I have the complete opposite. The clairsentience is my strongest skill. So when they're talking to me, I hear or I feel their words, and
Mm-hmm.
that translates into words for me. Whereas you, it sounds like they're right there in the room with you, like you and I talking is the same as you talking with them.
Yes.
Whereas with me, it's like the vibrations come in and I feel the vibrations. It's like, all right, well, what does that? That means hello. Well, that means, blue,
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting how we have different skills,
Yes.
but yet they've evolved to the same place.
Yeah, and I think clairsentience is better. Like, if you think about it, if you are with somebody, like, say, another human being, and you're speaking to them, if they say something and you want to know if what they're saying is truthful, just hearing it, sometimes you can't tell, especially if you don't know the person, and especially, like, you would rely on seeing them.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, I guess, more often when communicating with them, you'd rely on sensing and feeling, because it's like, well, does this energy match what they're saying? Are they telling me the truth? Like,
Mm-hmm.
the way we communicate with other people, there's so much more. There's body language and things like that. So
That I can attest to, because when I do a lot of screening and working with them myself, when I verify identities, I use my clairsentience to verify their identities. It's like, is your vibration matching who you should be? And
exactly.
if not, well, then they're probably an imposter.
Yes. And developing that sense, because they're all useful senses.
Oh, they are.
But there's different layers of things you can get, and reasons why you would develop them that's probably more advanced. But
Mm-hmm.
I did want that, because it was like sometimes I would hear things and I was like, well, I don't know where that came from, or is that coming from me? Am I influencing this somehow?
Mm-hmm.
Or is this somebody pretending to be something they're not?
What mindset did you approach awakening your abilities? Because I know some people, when they start and they don't see the results they get frustrated. Did you have to deal with frustration ever?
No, I mean, I did have frustration, but I was so focused on just making it happen. I was really excited. I was excited and curious. So everything that happened was sort of amazing to me, and I really focused on that. I came at it from a positive place. And I mean, I later on did have moments of frustration, and then it was like, okay, I need to adjust my perception, my attitude, because when you get frustrated, I feel like, at least for me, I tended to kind of sink and not do as well. I wouldn't get as far. I really wouldn't get anywhere. I'd just kind of be like, oh, well, this is terrible. This isn't working.
It kind of shuts down the energy growth.
Yes.
That's a really good way to approach it. Approaching any spiritual venture with curiosity and enthusiasm, and yes, getting really excited about any little thing that happens.
Yeah, I was.
That's how it grows. I mean, in the beginning, like, you're going to hear a table tap. That's going to be the little thing that happens. And to get excited about that and to be curious about it and to explore it and then to really take it to the next level, that's what opens up the next doors.
Yeah, and that's pretty much how I came at everything. I was incredibly excited. I was like, wow, this is so amazing. I can't believe this is happening, but it is happening. And it just, and if it didn't happen, I was like, okay, well, how can, maybe I need to work on this. What can I work on? Or I'd ask them, and then I'd be led to different exercises. I couldn't always hear them in the beginning, but they could lead me to books or exercises or different things that helped me get to where I needed to be.
And those are all very good questions to ask. And that's one thing I think a lot of people need to do when they're starting to grow their psychic abilities is ask questions. How can I do this? What is this? What's going on? How can I learn how to do this? What do I need to do to awaken this skill? What does this experience mean? How can I take this experience and go deeper with it? All these questions, and get really curious about your own abilities and your own psychic awareness. And I think that's one thing that we don't do anymore. We don't get curious about things. We don't explore things, and we don't really dive into things.
I think that we're kind of discouraged from doing that because another thing that I did focus on a lot was how I felt as a child when I was learning something new. Everything was amazing. Everything was new. I didn't judge it. I just kind of let it happen and see where it went from there. I knew what I wanted, and I just explored it at moments without judgment. And I think we are really taught to shut down things, to be negative.
And to judge everything.
Yes.
That is exactly how you go about it. And that's why as children we are so open and so able to experience the spiritual, just because we don't have that judgment. And I mean, I know our chakras, they're more open. They're in a state of chakra arousal where everything around us is new. Everything is exciting. And I'm not talking as arousal in a sexual way. I'm talking about as excited, as curious, as this is our world around us. What is this? And just that exploration as we grow older, we that dulls, and we don't get curious about the world around us. We don't get excited, and the world doesn't inspire us or arouse us. We kind of just exist in it.
Yes.
And I think that shuts down a lot of our abilities and prevents us from really, going where we want to go.
I think so too, and I think we also block ourselves. Maybe I've seen people who have certain expectations of how things are going to go, and they want to go from not being able to feel, hear, or see, or sense anything to, having full-blown manifestations and having their entire lives change. And I don't think you can really just go to that. You have to build that up. You have to open things up. And I mean, when I first started, I heard a lot about people opening their third eyes. There was all of these, different ways of doing it, and then warnings not to do it. And, people saying, well, you can rip it open, or all these other things. Or if you open it all at once, it can be traumatic. And I did try some of the things and nothing happened. I didn't try the ones that came with a warning because I was a bit like, well, I don't really want to rip my third eye open. I would like it to open. But they had instructions that open and close it. And
that has honestly never stood with me.
It didn't work at all for me.
Yeah, it just, I never thought that the third eye was something you just ripped open. I always thought it was a muscle that you worked.
That, when I found that method from you, that is what finally worked for me, because I did try all these other methods and ways and expecting things, and there's all these things written about how it should work and what you should feel and what you should see, and it never happened. Nothing happened. I was kind of like, well, this is just not working. Mm-hmm. When I approached it like how you've described it as a muscle, then I was like, okay, this makes sense. And I found that because I could see then the small things that were happening, and I focused on that and tried to develop the senses further to get more of an experience, to hear more, to see more.
You also brought up something else that was actually, I think, paramount to your success. Was you started your exercises focusing on the physical world, feeling the physical world, hearing the physical world. If you can't hear in the physical world or feel in the physical world or be aroused by the physical world, how can you feel, hear, or see, or be aroused by the spiritual world when it's such a distant place to our physical experience?
Yes, I know what you're saying with that, and I do think that did help. At the time, I really didn't know what I was doing. I'm going to be completely honest. I was led to these exercises, and it was like, all right, well, hearing. How do I develop my hearing? How do I make my hearing more sensitive? And then I did find the exercises with the listening to every sound, because the way, and this was, I think, in an article I read while I was looking at how to do this, the human brain filters out so much. And I thought, okay, well, if it's filtering all this out, if I stop and listen, if I stop and focus on all the things that are there that I hear, but I just sort of tune out, I should be able to tune into different things.
That's the arousal element. As we grow up, we stop experiencing everything. When we're younger, everything is new and exciting. But as we get older, we do tune things out, and that's what shuts down our chakras. So that actually ties into reawakening your chakras to be aroused by the stimulus that's around them. So it actually ties into that.
It makes a lot of sense too. Yeah, at the time I really didn't know. I was just like, all right, well, here's the exercises. This is what I found, what I was led to. Let me try this. And it did work for me. Mm-hmm. I really didn't know why at the time, but I was getting results. I was able to hear things. Mm-hmm. And I was able to pick things out more and start sort of shifting my attention and my focus to what I wanted.
Mm-hmm. Celebrate the little things and make them big things. Experience big things.
Yes, because it did grow on itself. Like, it built, and it got better and better. Like, I noticed it was sharper. I would hear more things. Mm-hmm. Same thing. I noticed it a lot with was it clairvoyance, where I could see things, because it started out very fuzzy. I just had colors. I had colors and blurs and blobs, on a good day. There was not really much definition or anything. And then over time, doing different exercises, trying different things, and really working on it daily, I started to see fine details. I did visualization exercises as well. And what I did with that was, I would take an object in the physical environment, I would study it, and then I would close my eyes and recreate it in my mind, so that I had the ability to, I guess, focus on the details in my mind. And it did work. It helped me to see details. Mm-hmm. And there were other exercises I did. I don't remember them off the top of my head. This was a few years ago, but I have them all written down in a journal, because what I would do was I would write the exercise down, and then I would write my journal entries after it. And I would write, whatever the date was, what I did and what I experienced. And then when I switched exercises, I would then copy the next exercise into my journal. And then I would write the date and what I experienced. And I just did that.
How important would you say journaling is?
I think I don't know if I can say how important it is, because I think it's absolutely essential. Because looking back, when I stopped, I would have days where I would get frustrated. And I was like, I can't see as well as I want to see. I would read back to when I started, and some of it was like horrifying, because it was like, oh, I was so clueless. And now it's like, okay, I can see how much I've learned by reading this.
Oh, I know. I look back in some of my old journals and I'm like, oh my gods.
Yeah.
If anybody ever saw this.
Yeah, I wanted to burn it. And I was like, no, I can't, because I'd have to save this to look back at it.
it's interesting because I think everybody has that. We all go through a phase where we know nothing, where we know absolutely nothing. And I would even argue that we never ever will know everything. The second you think you know everything, you know nothing. We all have that where as we learn things, we become adept, we become experienced, and then we look back and it's like, oh, well, that was unfortunate. But why we've been trained even to have a negative association with that. I mean, fears of looking stupid, fears of looking silly. I mean, that in itself holds us back from success.
It does.
I know even for me, like I trip over my words when I talk. I know when I play this back, I'm going to hear myself and go, oh, I tripped over my words. It's been something I've struggled with my whole life. But fear of looking silly or fear of being like, well, somebody's going to listen to this and be like, well, she can't talk properly. That would hold me back from actually getting information out there. So facing, those fears and realizing, it's okay to look silly. I think those journals kind of remind us of that we all have these things where we look silly, and that's okay.
Yes, and actually it reminded me of something that was really important when I first started communicating with them, and that was getting past the feeling of I feel stupid or I look stupid or I feel silly. Because when I was really quiet, I kept to myself. I was in the online spiritual community before I found Satan and Sons and joined the forum there, and I didn't post. I was kind of a lurker. I just stayed there. I read things. I kept to myself. I wrote in my personal journal, but I would not have posted anything online. And that was one thing they pushed me to do, and I was like, but I sound crazy. I sound stupid. And it took everything in me and them pushing me to not only do it and write about it in my journal, but put it out there and risk looking stupid. And I was surprised because nobody ever was like, wow, you're stupid. Everybody was like, wow, that's amazing. And then it was like, oh, this is really helpful.
That's usually what it comes down to. That's kind of what I never thought you were stupid. I liked your posts. I wish you'd write more. I was the same way though. When I first got into this community, everybody thought I was an old lady because of my inability to really navigate technology because I isolated myself so much and stayed so recluse that I just, because I was so afraid of doing that one thing of looking stupid.
Yeah.
And that was one thing that I had to get over was, yes, I'm going to trip over my words. Yes, my grammar and punctuation sucks. Yes, I have all these things that could stop me and hold me back. But I had to get to the point where I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to do this. I want to do this, and I'm going to push myself to do this. And yeah, I've had positive response too. I found that most people I think have these hang-ups themselves.
Yeah.
So when you're willing to get out there and do this, it's not so much people going, haha, you tripped over your words. It's, wow, I trip over my words too. So there's an identity there. People can identify with it, and they can empathize with it because they've been there themselves.
Yeah, and I find it inspiring too, because it's like, and it also kind of takes the pressure off, because you see other people out there doing it and making mistakes and pushing through it. And I think pushing through that fear of not doing everything perfectly, of looking stupid or doing something that everybody would just be horrified by, getting past that fear and just doing it anyway and not caring. And I mean, you can say, and it gets to a point where there's a balance, because of course in most cases people do still care somewhat what they look like. You don't want to get to a point where you don't care at all, I think. But it's balancing that and not letting it stop you, pushing through the fear.
I'm reminded of this comedian. She speaks with a wisp, and she actually incorporates that into her routine. So it's not that she's just not caring and not doing it. It's okay, this is who she is. This is how she was born. So she's just running with it. It's like, who cares,
Yeah.
I have this wisp, and it works in my routine, and it's hilarious. Laugh, all of you, laugh. And it's that mindset. It's that, you're always striving to be better, but don't try to be perfect. And if you're not perfect, don't let that stop you.
Exactly.
Work to improve it, but don't let where you are stop you.
I think sometimes too there is always going to be people that make comments, whether they're trolls or you know, they just have their own personal hang-ups, and maybe they were beaten down too, and you know, they can't accept somebody else doing something because they were attacked for it, so now they're kind of repeating the same thing that was done to them.
Yes.
And I would just ignore those people.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, focus on the people who build you up. On the negative people or the people that, you know, make you feel less or bad, yeah, ignore them. I completely agree. Mammon has told me many things like that basically there's going to be people out there that are going to try to stop you. There's going to be people out there that are going to cut you down. There's going to be people out there that are going to attack you for being who you are. And focus on they're sending energy your way and not to worry about them. Keep doing what you're doing and keep growing and building, and don't let any of them get you down.
Definitely.
Yes. Well, this was fun. We should do this again.
We should.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Till next time.